Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Bluecoat Talks live today. I'm Katrina, and I'm a staff scientist at Science North. You'll normally find me developing our new programming and events for our adult audiences, like our Nightlife on the Rocks. So sometimes I'm kind of hidden behind the scenes, but today we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about what everybody is talking about. There is a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, and it can be a struggle to stay positive through everything that we are experiencing. Everybody's experiencing it, and we're all going through it in different ways. So I don't know about you, but for me, one of the biggest struggles that I've had is that I haven't been able to do any of the things that I normally do in my everyday life. So I can't hang out with my friends. All of my indoor soccer games got canceled, and I can't go to the gym. And these are things that I love to do. So on top of that, I'm a really social person, and I love spending time with people, and I love being out and about. So being home is super, super hard for me. I'm doing it, but it's definitely a struggle. You know, we're not only in the middle of this global pandemic that we're experiencing, there are still so many other things that we're all experiencing every day. So many other struggles that we had before that are still with us right now. So, for example, we celebrated Earth Day this week, and there is a lot of talk about climate change right now. This is something that we're still dealing with, even through all of these other things that we're experiencing. All of these uncertainties and negativity can cause a lot of stress. So I think it's safe to say that we have a lot of stuff going on. So through all of this, how do we deal with it? How do we stay positive? And today, that is what we're going to talk about. So helping us with this chat is my friend, Jessica Savage. She is a registered psychotherapist at HeadWay Clinic here in Sudbury. So let's say hi to Jessica.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Katrina.
Hi, Jess. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me here. This is wonderful.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. We're pretty excited about talking about this. I'm really excited. I know, you know that I love psychology and I love mental health. So this is something that's very passionate for me or to me. So I'm really excited to get your take on kind of what's happening. What are we experiencing? Give us your thoughts. What do you think?
So as you mentioned, right, there's a period of uncertainty here. So a lot of times questions are like, what's going on? What's happening? And that's a really tough question to answer at times because, like you said, there's lots of different things that are happening right now. So we are in the middle of a pandemic, and that can sound really scary to a lot of people, and it is. We're facing this period of uncertainty, and every one of us has had our routines turned upside down in one way or another. So what we were used to, we're not really able to do anymore. What we enjoy, we're not able to do anymore, and that's really tough to cope with. So, in terms of that disruption, it's normal for people, regardless of their age, to experience that stress and anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm struggling with not going out. That's something that I love to do. So I kind of feel like my whole life just got canceled, you know? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's like I was living this great life, doing all of these fun things, and then all of a sudden I was told you can't do any of this anymore. So I'm sure other people are feeling that way as well. And I just want to remind everyone out there that you can send us all of your questions. We'll have a chance to do a little bit of a Q&A with Jess as well. So please send us your questions or your thoughts about all of this. But yeah, so you kind of, I guess from my perspective, I almost feel like I'm grieving the loss of my social life.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I think that you hit the word right where it is the grieving process. A grief can happen when we experience a loss. And right now there's a loss of several things. You said a loss of social life, a loss of routine, a loss of, going to school and friends and birthdays and, all of these things that we're so used to.
Yeah, and and we mentioned this too. Like everyone is experiencing such different things, depending on what was kind of taken away from you, or what you're missing out on. High school students are missing their graduations. Parents are now also in this different routine with their children, and that can be tough because they might still have work, or people who are living alone, are experiencing things differently. So I guess collectively, like how do we kind of get through all of this when we're experiencing things in such different ways?
And so that grief, right, it's a normal part when we suffer that loss. So all of those feelings, whether they're anger, sadness, frustration, like we can experience all of them, and they can come in waves. So 1 minute we can be okay, or we can feel okay. And then all of a sudden we can feel really frustrated and be like, this sucks. Like this really sucks. I don't like it. So I think one of the most important things that we can do when we're grieving is allowing ourselves to acknowledge what we're feeling, give ourselves permission to feel those emotions, whatever they may be. Pretending like they're not there really can make them stronger over time and leave us feeling really lousy or guilty for not being okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely a really good point. I actually had a super bad day this week, so I totally understand. I was really upset, yeah, it was just a bad day, and I just, you know what? I thought, okay, tomorrow's a new day, so let's just deal with the bad day, and then we'll just kind of wipe that away, and it'll be good.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think one of the other things that I've noticed, and I'm sure people out there will understand because we've been seeing so much conversation around all of this too. Um, if you're not productive, is that okay? Because we're talking about having bad days, and again, we're talking about working from home, but this isn't a normal working from home. This is a trying to work from home through experiencing this crisis and all of these other struggles. So how can we stay motivated, or is it okay, like, again, just to have that day where we don't want to do anything, we just want to watch Netflix? Like, is that okay?
Absolutely, that's okay. I think we have this big push to be productive and to be positive all the time. That toxic positivity that can be there and really make us feel like, oh my goodness, if I'm having that bad moment, the whole rest of the day is ruined, or that bad moment means that I'm just not coping.
Right.
And so when we talk about that productivity, it's important to know when we put those expectations to learn a new language while also having this intensive workout routine, while learning new recipes, while having a spotless house and everything else that we've been putting off, all the while trying to cope with the surge of emotions, it's a lot. So it's important to have a flexible routine to make sure that we are keeping active or moving in some way or another, that we are eating, and that we are working our minds, whether it's creatively or through conversations with loved ones, while balancing it with that downtime and that relaxation
Yeah.
too. So
Yeah.
perhaps it's going for a walk outside, playing tag with your siblings or with your kids, creating a fun obstacle course in the backyard, or playing chef, and seeing what new plates you can create, like a theme even with green eggs and ham. And then being able to have that time with Netflix to watch that TV show or that movie or to play a video game, like, that counts as productivity, because all of that is under the umbrella of self-care. And self-care is going to be really important, especially when we're stressed and anxious.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so you mentioned kind of having this balance, right? Like, it's really sort of understanding the things that you need to do to take care of yourself, and make sure that you're not kind of getting lost and kind of losing yourself. That's sort of how I look at it. So when you feel really demotivated, like you just can't do anything, and perhaps that happens for a few days, what is that? Like, what is it? The grief that's causing that? What is causing that? And how do you kind of get out of that slump? Like, if it lasts for a longer period of time, what do we do? How do you kind of deal with that?
And so that's an excellent question. So the first part of it, right, is what is that? What's going on? And so I think a really important part of coping is being able to understand what's going on with our mind, what's going on with our body. So stress does a lot to our brain too. And it does cause, a domino effect of sorts. So we have a little area in the brain, it's probably like the little shape of an almond. It's called the amygdala, and that's responsible for experiencing, all of our emotions. They're happy, sad, frustrated, and then that little area sends signals to another part of our brain called the hypothalamus. And that's kind of the command center. So you picture someone like me here sitting, and we've got all these screens and all these buttons, and it's telling our body what to do and when, so it's telling us, okay, maybe we need to give some extra energy, like increase our heart rate or take in more oxygen to prepare for that fight, flight, or freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when we have that kind of system kick in, cortisol then goes kind of pumping through our body and really giving us that energy that we lost from the stressful event, right? When that event eventually goes away, the cortisol is lower and we feel back to normal,
Right.
you know? But
Yeah.
right now, what's happening is it can be really hard to get to that calm state because we're hearing new things every day or every hour that's kicking in that fight, flight, or freeze, that's making us really anxious or stressed. So when we start feeling more emotional, perhaps maybe we don't want to socialize as much, or we want to avoid people, like you said, just don't want to do anything. That can also manifest physically with changes in energy levels or sleep or appetite. And then, cognitively too. So if we're more forgetful or more distracted, we're more on edge, angry, sad, that images just all those emotions are coming at us.
Yeah, all of those great things that we love to
Yeah. So I think understanding, right, that our brain is in that time of stress, and so it's firing, and we're having all these symptoms or all these systems rather in overdrive.
Mm-hmm.
So having a time where we don't feel motivated, that's why we're doing a
Yeah.
lot. Our brain's working overtime.
Yeah. So I just want to give a shout out again to everybody who's joining us, and just remind everyone that we're kind of here talking about how to stay positive through everything that's going on in the world. And we're talking to Jess. She is from HeadWay Clinic. So please send us your questions, because we will be taking questions from the audience as well. So we're just kind of talking about why we feel demotivated. And yeah, I mean, I'm totally feeling that. I'm still working. I'm still here with everybody, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and sometimes I just don't want to do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're all going to feel that stress. And again, just repeating that we're kind of all going through it in different ways, right? And some people might not feel that lack of motivation like others are. And it really just depends on kind of what you're doing every day and what you're experiencing, right? So we're talking about trying to stay positive too. And I think that that's a big piece through all of this, because we're going to lack motivation. We're not going to want to do stuff. We definitely are feeling stressed. There's a lot going on in this world right now. So, are there like some tips and tricks for people to kind of stay positive? Like, what can we do at home? And how can we also help our community or our family or our friends be positive and help them through this?
Absolutely. So a big part of that positivity as well is that self-compassion, and being able to say, it's okay that I'm feeling this way right now. When we allow that to come in, those emotions to come in, we acknowledge them, and then they go on their way, right? They leave. So having that self-compassion, practicing that gratitude, whether it is, hey, I'm grateful that I got to sleep in today, or I'm grateful that I was able to get out of bed and get going. Whatever lane you fall in,
Mhm.
being able to stay connected. And I think that definitely includes staying connected to friends, family, and just people in our community. And if we go on to different forums, or we start that Skype chat, or we see even just some of the really kind of neat messages that I've seen around Sudbury, where it's, we're all in this together, because we are.
Yeah.
So having those periods of mindfulness to be able to recognize what's going on and then lean into that positivity when we need it can help fuel that momentum and have that just like desire to stay positive for ourselves as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so on that note, we actually have a question that I guess we have a bunch of people asking. So I have the questions in the chat on the side over here. So I'll kind of go through as many as I can. So we have quite a few people wondering, is the added stress why people can't sleep and just feel so overly exhausted? So thanks to Leanna and Jasmine and a bunch of other people for this question. Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling that too. So is that really just the stress and the added hormones and just everything we're experiencing?
Absolutely, that definitely plays a role. So we talked about those systems before that are in
Mm.
overdrive and that are firing. And so a big thing as well is if we're looking at the news or looking at social media or something before bed, we rile ourselves up knowingly or unknowingly, and then we try and sleep. And so we're not able, our brain is still in that fight or flight mode. Our brain is still going, oh my goodness, there's something here that we need to be alert for. We need to be prepared
Right.
for. And it's very contradictory to the part that wants to sleep, where it's okay, we're going to relax, we're safe, we're okay. So when we have these added stressors, it can impact sleep absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got another question from Amy. So speaking of kind of going back to our talk about community and friends, Amy is asking if there are any suggestions that we can give our frontline workers to take care of themselves from day to day, especially with everything that they're experiencing right now.
Absolutely. So definitely practicing that self-compassion, because there's an incredible demand on frontline workers right now
Hmm.
to be able to cope with everything that's going on and function in their jobs, and then have these additional responsibilities or going to different places in their employment and being expected to have that momentum and never stop, which they're human. You guys are human. It's okay to need that break. So self-compassion, definitely one of them. Mindful breathing is also something that can be very effective for everybody, but also for frontline workers, because we can practice that whether we have 30 seconds or whether we have, a full lunch period or a lunch break.
Mm-hmm.
That mindful focused breathing can help to slow those systems down and to kind of flip the switch into the parasympathetic nervous system that gives us this full body calm.
Right.
Mm.
So I know I've definitely tried being mindful, and it is not that easy.
No.
Um, yeah, so so for those that don't know, being mindful, and I'm sure Jess can explain this a little bit better than I can. But being mindful is really about being present, and in that moment, and not dwelling on things, and just trying to, like Jess said, trying to stay calm, trying to be aware of the things that are happening around you, but not be judgmental with yourself or not be self-critical. So it is not an easy thing to do, for sure. So do you have any advice on how people can be a little bit more mindful, especially these frontline workers or our essential staff that are, or essential workers that are out there every day, doing all kinds of things, whether they're hospital employees or working at the grocery store or at a gas station or anything. What can they do to kind of stay in that mindfulness?
So your explanation of mindfulness was wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
So it is absolutely that, right? Being present in that moment without judgment, without trying to change or make something happen. And so for, as you said, frontline workers, mindful breathing for sure, because we're focusing on our natural breath, so we recognize where it naturally falls. And then we can recognize how often we breathe in, hold that breath, and then prolong the exhale. So other examples of mindfulness can be engaging your senses as much as possible. So these can be really great grounding techniques, whether it's, what can I see around me right now? What can I smell? What do I hear? What do I feel? And that can be physically too. So even me sitting in the chair here, can I feel my legs on the bottom of the chair? Can I feel my feet on the ground? Really just bringing my awareness and focus into the present moment can help to get rid of, at least temporarily, all those things that are really trying to invade our consciousness and increase that stress.
Right. So really kind of staying grounded is a good way to describe that too.
Yeah.
What you're saying kind of reminds me a little bit of doing yoga. So I love yoga. But it's again, at the end of your class or really anytime through your class, be mindful and being present in that moment or in those poses that you're doing is really important. So that's kind of what this reminds me of. So
Yeah.
perhaps, and this, this is a question to you. Can you do that through physical activity or through other things that you're doing? And
Absolutely you
yeah.
can. So there's mindful walking where you are taking that extra time to notice if your heel is hitting and then your toes. There's mindful eating where you're engaging those senses, right? It's how does the food taste? What's the texture of the food? How does it sound? Is it warm? Is it cool? There's so many things that we can do, and we can incorporate those throughout our day. And I think it's good to have a mixture of those things so that it doesn't become redundant or repetitive. We're
Mhm.
constantly, again, practicing that gratitude as well as mindfulness.
That's awesome. So, okay, this is actually a great segue because you mentioned food. So we have a question about how to not go overboard with indulging. So, how do you find that balance between, having the food that gives you comfort or snacks when you're at home all the time, versus maintaining, a long-term goal of perhaps eating better or, just maintaining a more nutritious lifestyle or eating for, not just for the sake of eating and not just for being social, which definitely as a culture we do all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah. So how can you kind of balance that out?
So there's a difference between that true hunger and emotional hunger. So
Hmm.
true hunger, so we can recognize those physical warning signs, those physical things, right? So our stomach may growl, we may start to feel maybe a little bit of that brain fog, a little bit more lethargic, tired as well, and then we kind of reference back into when was the last time we ate. If we find that we're sitting on the couch watching Netflix and we're like, maybe I'll go and grab this bag of chips, or maybe I'll go and grab this bowl of carrots, whatever the food may be. But it's very just brought on kind of suddenly, and we're just, well, that might sound good, or that might just give me something to do. You
Hmm.
know, so being able to recognize what your personal warning signs are of that true hunger versus that emotional hunger.
Right. So really, I guess it does kind of go back to, that finding that balance and being mindful of what are you eating, when are you eating it, how much are you eating, and what kind of why are you doing that behavior, right? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay. So we have a comment that I want to share. This is from Bree. So she said that one thing that she's been reading is just kind of coping however you can. So, finding whatever works for you, and kind of fitting that into your lifestyle. So, how, if people really aren't sure what will work, is this a matter of trial and error? Like, do we just kind of go about it and see what happens?
Yeah, right. So everyone is going to have those different coping strategies, and that's okay, right? So what works for one person may not work for another person. So music has been a really great strategy for me. That's something that I really value and really enjoy. So that's having a playlist that really just makes me feel good, or, because I'm coming into the office as well. So if I'm singing in my car, like, to me, that's helpful. Other people may not be their thing, and that's okay. I think it's great to have that exploration and going with bordering that line of comfortable and
Mhm.
uncomfortable, because that's where that growth happens. If we stay in the comfortable, nothing changes for us. If we
Right.
go all in into the uncomfortable and force those things, we get really discouraged, frustrated, angry, and then we revert back even further. And we're like, I'm never doing that again. You
Yeah,
know?
that doesn't sound pleasant. I even made a face when you
No,
said that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not pleasant, right? And so to have that toe in the uncomfortable, to see maybe, okay, this might work for me, this might not. And then allowing ourselves again with that self-compassion to come in and say, yeah, that wasn't for me, but maybe I'll try this next time.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point to say, like just kind of dipping your toe, like we said, dipping your toe in the water, it's nice to kind of be open to try things to see what does work. I know for me, I like stress bake and then I don't
Yeah.
want to eat it all. So I just give it to other people. But that's definitely something that really works for me. So yeah, I think that's great advice. Is just try something and just see what happens. And I guess if there's a day that you don't want to try anything new, that's okay too. Yeah, so we're just kind of working through all these things. I just want to again remind everybody that you can definitely send us your questions. We're talking to Jessica. She is a registered psychotherapist at HeadWay. So we are talking about all of the things that are happening in the world right now, and how to deal with all of these struggles that we're going through. So I actually have a question myself because one of my friends sent me a message talking about how she felt like a really bad parent for not getting her kids to do anything. So she has two teenagers, and she's really struggling right now with, them missing school, they're missing their friends, and they're at that crucial age where they want to be social and they want to spend time with them. And of course, it's getting to be beautiful outside. I mean, you can see that it's very sunny in this room. So you know, what can parents do when their kids just aren't feeling up to it, or they don't want to, they don't want to do their homework right now? They don't want to really go anywhere and they want to spend time on their phones or their iPads, or they want to FaceTime, or just be alone in their rooms. Like what can parents do to kind of like combat that negativity?
And so that's an excellent question and an excellent point because there are a lot of different dynamics right now. One, a lot of people, we're all at home at the same time. So we can love our family to pieces and be like, you know what, I want that alone time. I'm craving that alone time. You know, especially with kids where they're starting to look to their peers as
Hmm.
opposed to their parents.
Hmm.
So really wanting to kind of still feel included and still see what their peers are up to and have a bit of that comparison, you know, that can be really healthy as long as we don't get too far into the comparisons, because as we know about social media and everything too, it's not always what it appears at times, right?
Yeah, for
So for
sure.
yeah, so for parents, a lot of things, right? And a lot of things that I hear too when I'm working with people is like, I'm a bad parent because my kids aren't doing their homework. Or, I'm a bad parent because my kid doesn't want to eat breakfast anymore. They're sleeping in. So it's important to be able to have those conversations with your kids and to
Hmm.
check in with them and to say, how are you doing? Do you have any questions? What do you need right now? And if they say I don't know, to normalize that it's
Right.
okay.
Right.
Like having those check-ins can
Hmm.
be so great and can also have that connection and that quality time too, to know, okay, they're my parents, they're thinking about me. And I know I can go to them if any of those things come up.
Hmm. So we're going back to that being open and just kind of paying attention to the things that are going on, and you brought up normalizing the situation, which is something that we've seen a lot of and we've been talking a lot about as well. So I think from my perspective, and I just have a comment about this, like I think it's okay, like we talked about, validating those feelings that we have and just being okay with them. I think it's okay that we just don't know stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like there's a lot that we're not going to know. We're kind of
Yeah.
all going through this, in different ways. And again, like I said, we're experiencing it in different ways. So we're we're really not going to know a lot, and we kind of have to be okay with that. And I think, for some of us, depending on, kind of who we are and what we take from society, that's strange to us to say I don't know. um yeah.
Especially as parents as well, right? There is an expectation to have those answers, you know, and to be able to always have those answers. So as
Mhm.
you said, it's okay to say, you know what, I'm human, and it's okay right now that I don't have the answers to that. I don't know if anyone has the answers to some of the questions that are out there, and just normalizing it. You
Yeah.
know?
Definitely. So we've got a couple of questions here. So one, I'll start with this one. Um, we were asked if you have any tips about sharing a space with someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So this is for all of the couples and families out there. You are in each other's spaces all the
Mhm.
time right now.
Mhm.
What do we do? How do we deal with that?
Yes. And everyone is feeling that, you know. So as I said earlier, we can love our partner or we can love our family to pieces and not want to spend every moment with them. That's okay. It doesn't mean we care about them any less. So when relationship, for example, when we get into a relationship, we're still two individuals in that relationship. And so it's really important to have that time apart and those things that we enjoy doing just as individuals still within the day.
hmm So I think this kind of goes back to, other things that you were saying too, finding time to have your own space and self-care is very important, even if you are stuck in a house or a condo or wherever you are with someone.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, right. So even it can be things like setting aside time and having that conversation with your partner or with your family and saying,
Mhm,
you know what? Okay, from 3 to 4:30, that's kind of everyone's independent time. So we all get to have that time apart. And so it's normalizing it for the family
mhm.
or for the dynamics in the relationship. And then it's also something that's planned ahead so that kids or sometimes adults really appreciate knowing what's going to happen as much as possible. So it can help with
Right.
that period of uncertainty. So if we can say, oh,
Okay.
I know every day I get that time for me.
hmm So it kind of becomes part of your routine, right? So I
Mhm.
guess that. I mean, we kind of say, like, even when we're talking about self-care, we're doing things for ourselves. If you struggle with finding a way to put it into your day, a tip that you can do is, or a trick you can do, is to kind of put that in your schedule. Um, it's just like booking, downtime. That's okay. If you struggle to kind of book that time for yourself, it's really important to make sure that it's there somewhere. Um, okay, so
Absolutely. Right.
great.
So I think scheduling it can be really great too, because it can compound or combat rather that belief that we have to be productive, that we have to
hmm
be doing something. And especially if we're so used to following a very strict routine, we can trick our brain a little bit into saying, okay, but I'm actually supposed to be doing nothing right now. So I'm right on track. I'm following my schedule. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing because it's in my agenda or it's in my calendar.
That is an awesome way to look at that. I definitely function on a schedule. I'm pretty good for that. So I actually do schedule my downtime, and my friends always make fun of me. But if it's there, I gotta do it.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I do it all the time. So I guess I've been doing it right this whole time. Okay, so we've got one more question, and this is actually a really interesting one. So thank you, Jasmine, for this. So she's asking about PTSD and how everything right now is impacting people who might have PTSD. So for those that don't know, that is post-traumatic stress disorder. It's brought on, normally by a very significant traumatic event in your life. And this is a traumatic event. So is it possible that, going through this global crisis and this pandemic has been a trigger for some people and has, created their PTSD or whatever anxiety or depression they might already be dealing with? Has it really made it worse? And what do they do if that is the case?
Absolutely, is that it can make things worse for people who are experiencing those pre-existing conditions or difficulties, right? So
Mhm.
one trigger that can happen is when we're going through those surge of emotions, as we talked about earlier, it can remind us of that other time, right? That past event where those emotions were just as strong, or they came on just as intensely, or just as out of nowhere. So it can be very triggering for people. And we can see a surge or an increase in depressive symptoms, in anxious symptoms, in that hypervigilance or those flashbacks or nightmares that are associated with PTSD. And so I think what's very important as well is to reach out in those moments and to make sure that if things become overwhelming, that we seek out someone who can maybe not even do anything, but just be there with us in that moment because we can feel very alone. And reaching out to us at Headway Clinic too, to
Hmm.
be able to access some of those services because you guys are not alone in that.
Hmm. So on that note, I do want to mention again, you can definitely find Headway Clinic on Facebook. You can also find them on Instagram and on YouTube. I'm a big fan of your place. I have personally used Headway Clinic, so it's a wonderful, wonderful place. I do have a question based on what you just said, Jess. So Okay, so I know that people are experiencing whatever they're experiencing right now, and definitely people who are already dealing with some mental health struggles might be experiencing, this a little bit more or tenfold over
Mhm.
what some other people might be. What do you think is going to happen once we kind of come out of this? Because this is kind of a rough go. What are your thoughts about maybe what people are going to be experiencing when we kind of start getting back into some normalcy, or at the end of this, how what might we all feel?
And so we don't know necessarily, right? So, and that in and of itself can be anxiety inducing. So
Hmm.
adapting to change can be difficult and can bring up an increased level of stress. I think we will see a surge of those things after we, get back to normal. No one really knows what that normal is going to be, and everyone's version of normal is different.
Hmm.
So it's going to be adapting to the change again.
Yeah, for sure. So not only are we kind of experiencing it now, and we did even
Mhm.
about a month ago, kind of when all of
Mhm.
this started to ramp up, um, we're kind of going to go through like another wave, I guess, of trying to figure stuff out again and trying to see what works,
Yeah.
kind of figuring out who we are
Mhm.
in this other world that we're living in.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be a period of that discovery, a period of trying to adapt. And we are going to see, as you said, that second surge
Hmm.
for mental health. And I think it's going to be very important that we are again aware of that
Mm.
and knowing that we're not alone in it. That surge isn't going to come for us just because we're not coping properly or we're not just like toughening it out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think all in all, we really like being mindful is super important, and being open and honest. And I think, taking care of ourselves is definitely something that we talked about multiple times. And that's really, really important to everything that we're doing. I think people need to remember, that it's just, it's, we really don't know what's going on right now. And we just kind of have to roll with it, and that's okay. Um, it's definitely okay to just go day by day, figure out whatever works for you. And if you need help, there's definitely help out there. It's okay. It's really okay.
Yes. Mhm, mhm. And as I said too, like that reaching out, right? So one of the things that I've seen when I've driven around is some posters or some pictures in people's front windows. Again, just as that kind of external reminder that okay, we're in this together and we're
Mhm.
experiencing this as well. Or having some people calling in on like radio stations, or as I mentioned earlier, those forums, just when we feel like maybe it's a little bit more difficult or feeling a little bit more alone, that we can kind of go into those avenues and really feel connected as a community.
Mhm.
So also checking in with a friend or loved one maybe that you haven't heard from in a while.
Yeah. Those are all really great points. So, speaking of community, this is exactly why we're here today. And if there aren't any other questions out there for now, we'll thank Jess for spending this time with us.
Absolutely.
It was so great to talk to you. I love talking to you about this stuff. It's just wonderful. So, thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you to all of our Science North fans. We miss you all so much. It's tough not being in the Science Center, and it's tough not having our events and our exhibit open. So, we're missing everyone just as much as everybody is missing us. So thanks to everybody again for joining us. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask us at any point. We can definitely talk to Jessica again. We can get HeadWay Clinic back. That's definitely something that we can do to keep engaging people, just in conversation about how we're doing and what's going on out there. So again, thanks for joining us. You can definitely find HeadWay Clinic on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Jess, it was wonderful to see you. It was great to talk to you. Yeah. I know I can't see you in person right now, but one day we'll do that again. So yeah, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was really wonderful. And as you mentioned, I mean, we are here to answer any questions and to provide that support as well. So if anyone has some additional questions, maybe some things that they weren't comfortable with talking about here and wanted to go a little bit deeper, definitely don't hesitate to give us a call at the Sudbury office. Or to email me directly as well. That's more than okay. That contact information is all there. So we are here for you guys.
That's awesome. It's really great to have that kind of support in the community too, and to know that, wonderful people like you are taking the time to help people. Yeah, it's great. It's great to have that support. So thank you again. I think that's it for us. So we'll talk to everybody soon. Okay. Bye, Jazz.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.